In the dark depths beneath the land of Avel, an ancient evil awakens. Embark on a perilous journey into the shadowy dungeons and become a legend.
Before your first game, assemble the boxes as follows. Now, put the components that you can see on the lid inside each box. If the box contains cards, their number, back design, and symbol are depicted on the lid to help you identify them easily. Check which components should go into each box. You can pause the video if needed. All colors of the components shown on the box lid match their actual appearance, and the quantities listed are accurate to what should be in the box. The boxes help you store the game and set it up quickly. You have 4 boxes with images of heroes, 1 box for universal pieces, 1 box for fairy tokens and skill tracks, 1 box for advanced item cards and universal cards, and 5 boxes for 5 chapters. Now, let's have a look at all the spaces on the game mat. The space for the universal card deck combined with 10 chapter cards that form the game deck. The monster passage divided into 6 spaces where monster cards will move. The spaces for threat tokens that increase monsters' attacks. The spaces for trap tokens that allow you to deal additional damage to monsters during the game if you're able to set them. The entrance to Avel Castle. If a monster card reaches this space, you lose the game. The space for the advanced item card deck, and 3 spaces for cards from this deck that create the advanced item card market. The space that allows you to remove a threat token during the game. 6 spaces for location cards from the current chapter. 3 spaces for fairy tokens that make up the fairy token market, where you can gain helpful fairies. And finally, the hero path, the most important place on the mat, which consists of 7 spaces where you will move your heroes. Now, it's time for the player board. The space for the skill track, which each player selects before the game starts. A reminder that you can discard 3 cards from your hand to choose one of the 4 basic actions. The hero icon, which you will also find in the corners of the cards in that hero's deck and on the box used for storing their components. The spaces for your hero's toughness tokens. If these tokens are depleted at any point of the game, the active player must immediately end their turn and start the hero return procedure, which will be explained later. The space for ready-to-use dust tokens. You can spend these tokens to pay for an action during the game. Important, each hero has a different maximum number of available dust tokens, and their starting amount is marked with a special symbol. The space for inactive dust tokens. This is where you'll move the dust tokens used to pay for an action during the game. The spaces for fairy tokens, where you store your fairies. You can use them anytime during the game. The maximum number of fairies varies between heroes. Place the game mat in the center of the table. Place the universal card deck face down in its designated space. Shuffle the starting monster cards and place a number of cards face up in the monster passage equal to the number of players, starting from the 6th space. Shuffle the fairy tokens and place them face down next to the game mat. Then, reveal 3 tokens and place them in their designated spaces on the mat. Place all the monster damage tokens next to the game mat. Arrange the threat tokens, trap tokens, and dice on the opposite side. Each player takes their selected hero's player board and the corresponding box of components. Players take out the components from the boxes and set up their player boards. Then, each player shuffles their deck and draws 5 cards to form their starting hand. Each player chooses one skill track and puts it on their player board. Then, they place a wooden marker on the starting space of their track. Choose the first player. They place their hero standee on the hero path on this space. The following players put their standees on the next spaces. Now, shuffle and place the advanced item card deck in its designated space on the game mat. Next, draw 3 cards from the deck and place them face up in the designated spaces next to it, forming the advanced item card market. Well done, the game is set up correctly. It's time to choose a chapter and add the corresponding components from the chapter box. Let's set up Chapter 1, Fire. Take all the components out of the box. Each chapter box contains 6 location cards, 10 chapter cards, and some extra components just for this chapter. Randomly place the 6 location cards face up in the designated spaces on the game mat. Combine the 10 chapter cards with the universal card deck on the mat and shuffle them. This will create the game deck with a total of 30 cards. Place the fire tokens on the conflagration card based on the chosen difficulty level. Place the remaining fire tokens next to the game mat. Take 2 fairy tokens from the stacks next to the mat and place them on the fairy sanctuary card. Each player takes a bucket token and places it with the empty side up above their player board. Great job! You are ready to play. On their turn, each player can perform the following actions. Play any number of cards from their hand and perform the actions indicated on them. Use the action available on the location card corresponding to the space with their hero standee. Use the skill from the skill track on their player board. Use 1 or more fairy tokens if they have them on their player board. Discard any 3 cards from their hand to their discard pile to do one of the 4 basic actions. At the end of their turn, the player places all unplayed and played cards in their discard pile and immediately draws 5 new cards from their deck. Then, the player reveals the top card from the game deck and adds a new monster to the monster passage. Or, if an event card is revealed, resolves its effect immediately and discards it to the discard pile. The game ends in several situations. You complete the chapter goal. For example, in the presented fire chapter, you must extinguish all fires. This means that at any point during the game, there are no fire tokens on any location card. In that case, you win. When the game deck is empty and the player can't reveal another card at the end of their turn. In that case, you lose. When any monster, during the movement of monster cards, moves from space 6 to the castle. In that case, you also lose. Now, let's see the elements of a basic hero card. The hero icon, which appears on each card of that hero. The available action that can be performed when playing this card. The story text that describes the action. For example, this card allows you to perform a direct sword attack against the monster next to your hero in the monster passage. You deal 1 point of damage to the monster. Let's go over the remaining basic hero cards. The boot icon. This action allows you to move your hero to an adjacent space on the hero path. The dust icon. This action allows you to activate 1 dust token on your player board. The shield icon. This action allows you to cancel 1 point of damage dealt by a monster. In this example, the hero should lose 2 toughness tokens due to the monster's attack. But using the shield action means the hero loses only 1 token. Important. A monster attacks the hero only when the hero has attacked it. As you can see on this card, there are 2 different action icons. The player can only use one of the available actions, and it is their decision which one to choose. The bow icon. This action allows you to attack a monster located a specific number of spaces away from your hero, anywhere from 1 to 3 spaces in any direction, depending on the number displayed inside the bow. You deal 1 point of damage to the monster. Important: with this type of attack, the monster cannot counterattack your hero because it is too far away. Advanced cards differ from basic ones in terms of appearance and available actions. The upper action is free, while the lower action requires paying 1 dust token. The player can use only one of these actions. Additionally, these actions are more powerful. For example, by using the free action from this card, you can deal 2 points of damage to a monster. If you spend 1 dust token to use the lower action, you will deal 3 points of damage instead. You can earn advanced cards, for example, by defeating a monster. They enhance your hero's deck. Let's look at a basic monster card. Monster's name. The story text. Toughness points. How much damage must be dealt to eliminate the monster from the game? Damage points. How much damage the monster will deal to the hero attacking it with a sword during combat. 1 tooth icon equals 1 point of damage. Reward for defeating the monster. In this case, the player can choose between gaining 2 fairy tokens or 1 card from the advanced card deck. Some monsters may feature both the tooth icon and the broken sword icon. To deal any damage to such a monster with a sword attack, the player must play at least 2 sword cards at once. Why? Because the monster will break one of the swords during the attack, and only the remaining swords can deal damage. Important: the broken sword icon on a monster card only applies when the monster is attacked with a sword. It does not affect ranged attacks, such as those made with a bow. During their turn, the player can play as many cards as they want, allowing them to perform a complex attack. For example, the player plays 2 swords and 1 shield to attack a monster. The monster receives only 1 point of damage because it has the broken sword icon, which means one of the player's swords gets broken, and only the second sword deals damage to the monster. Additionally, the shield played in this complex attack protects the player from the monster's counterattack, so the player's hero does not lose a toughness point during the attack. If at the end of their turn, the player reveals a monster card from the game deck, and there is already a monster on the first space in the monster passage, they must move all monster cards 1 space forward, which could lead to an immediate end of the game. If there is an empty space between the cards in the monster passage, the player only moves the cards in front of that space. To make it harder for monsters to break through to the castle, you can set up 2 traps in the monster passage. When a monster moves through a space with a trap, it takes additional damage. Once the monster triggers the trap, it is used up and must be removed from the game mat. Of course, you can place a new trap on the same space later. Each location card can only be used once by the player during their turn, unless the player uses a special action that allows them to perform the location card action a second time in the same turn. If at any point of the game any hero loses their last toughness token, even outside of their turn, the hero's return procedure must be followed. This immediately interrupts the active player's turn. The player who lost all their toughness tokens recovers them and moves their hero standee to space number 7 on the hero path. Then, the player whose turn was interrupted draws 2 cards from the game deck instead of 1, and the next player begins their turn. During the game, you can also heal your hero by playing a card with this icon. This will restore 1 toughness token to your hero. If you have the skill with this icon on your hero's skill track, you can use it to restore all toughness tokens to your hero. In the Fire chapter, heroes on the same space can exchange water buckets to extinguish the raging fire in specific locations more efficiently. In this case, one player empties their bucket by flipping the token to the empty side, while the other player fills their bucket by flipping the token to the full side. If you wish to start the entire campaign from the Fire chapter and plan to play the following chapters one by one, each player should choose 1 advanced item card from those they have at the end of this chapter and add it to their hero's basic deck. This allows players to start the next chapter with 11 cards instead of 10. This rule applies to each subsequent chapter, so you always begin with 11 cards in your deck. If you'd rather play the chapters individually, simply choose one advanced item card before the game starts and add it to your hero's basic deck. Remember, Dungeon Legends is all about teamwork. You can play with your cards visible to each other if you'd like, but the most important thing is to communicate during the game. Working together will make it easier to win. Your adventure begins now. Have fun.